Hi, I am your host, Leonette Talley, and you are listening to Virago 24/7. Virago is Latin for female warrior, and 24/7 is for all day, every day. Virago 24/7 is a weekly podcast that brings diverse women together to talk about life and our experiences in this world. We share our views on self-love, mental health, marriage, children, friendships, and really anything that needs to be talked about. Here, you will find everyday growth, everyday healing with everyday warriors. Just give me my space to move. 'Cause it's my thoughts, what I want, and I want what I want. Hello, everyone. Today, I am here with a new guest, and I always love a new guest because we get new perspectives and new stories. And her name is Josee Tremblay, and she is an author. And I don't like to give all the details of people. I like for them to speak for themselves. So I just want to welcome everyone, Josee Tremblay, to Virago 24/7. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Leonette.
Hi. So I know we've been trying to connect the past few weeks, and I'm glad that we finally connected. And so just tell me about you. I've looked you up. I've researched, just to see if we were going to be a good fit. And I'm like, okay, I like her. She seems like someone that's going to have a lot to say and some good stuff to share. So tell us about you.
Yes, so I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I had a long career in pretty much a male-dominated environment. And I didn't find a voice to try to speak up and be, I think you used the word warriors. I kind of like that, because it kind of speaks to building strength, building capacity. And I think that's where we connected. I'm really trying to find a voice to share my experience in non-traditional fields. I had a 30-year career now in that field, and it felt like I didn't have a lot of good voices around to give me tips and tricks on how to navigate all this. And to be a warrior is about standing up, but it's also about not trying to figure out things yourself. Try to leverage and walk in steps of others. So I wasn't a big fan of being that gal who speaks up and talk about how possible it is for you to be in a minority situation. But I felt compelled seeing so many women ramp off and make suboptimal choices about their careers, about their life choices, because they did not have the right support or they didn't have the right tools to consider pursuing their passion. So I felt really sad about that. And just over a year and a bit ago now, I wrote a book and I published it late last year, just to share what it means to be in a non-traditional field and how difficult it might be sometimes, but how rewarding it is as well. So that's about me. I'm basically a technical person and tried to find my voice to share some of the things that I wish I knew when I was younger.
So let's start from the beginning. I love all of this, but I like to start from the foundation. So what got you into engineering? What was it growing up that put you in that field? So let's start there.
Okay. Well, I was good in math and good in physics. And it's a little bit funny. You would say it's probably an engineering way of finding my path. But I went to the person at my school who was providing orientation guidance. And I remember the gentleman saying, oh, you can sit at this computer and fill out this 100 questions questionnaire. And I'll analyze the results with you and we'll compare with your marks and you can actually kind of decide what fits. So I did this. I sat at that little terminal and kind of filled out the 100 questions, and I came back and the gentleman said, well, you fit the profile of a mechanical engineer. And I had no mechanical engineers in my life. And basically I said, can you find a job in mechanical engineering? And they said, yeah, of course we can find jobs in mechanical engineering. And so that's how I said, well, that sounds like a good prospect for me. It was like that easy, or I guess not really taught through. I didn't ask how many women were in engineering. I didn't know. And I just, with writing the book, it was kind of time to step back and kind of looking at what are the ratios, what are the motivators, what are the limiting factors that will cause people to not consider a really rewarding career in a STEM world. And I think it's a lot of conditioning, but also it's just not knowing that the path exists for women. I have to say, my career, and to this day still now, I'm practicing, and I find that it's so rewarding to be applying yourself, your brain power, to solving the most complex problems of our world. And I'm super, super enthusiastic about that. And still to this day, so I had a long career, and throughout my career, I worked really difficult projects. But all along, it was really rewarding when you feel like you're breaking through some of the things that other people hadn't figured out, and you're actually helping the society in advancing and thinking through how can we adapt to the world that we live in a informed way using science. And for me, it's been really rewarding. I still work in many different subjects. I work as a director on different companies, some of which are doing remote sensing, and others are naval architecture companies, or it's a broad spectrum of things that you can do when you start learning physics and you start learning mathematics. And I want to share that don't be shy, even if you don't see a lot of you out there, to really step in that ring, because it's super rewarding, it's fun, and you will run into some issues because you're going to be a minority, and there's a whole lot of things that comes with that. But in the long run, you're going to be very happy that you did it, because it's so great to contribute to the society in the way that you can. And so that's my sharing.
So, getting into this profession in the very beginning, do you think you were naive to the situation once you said, I'm going to be an engineer, a mechanical engineer, I'm going to study this, and this is going to be my profession? Were you naive to the idea that you would be one of the only females, or were you prepared to handle those situations?
I would say naive is not the right word, because I almost thought, well, if someone else can do it, I can do it. I had a little bit more of a go-getter kind of attitude. And I studied in my second language. So there's many different things that were more of a worry at the time than the fact that I was just one of few in terms of gender. And as I entered the workplace, I realized I felt like it was a bit of a calling of mine to be able to be an inspiration for other women, to say it's possible that you can go to the field and be on a construction site, and you can, build compressors and install them, and you can figure out how you can reduce, a pressure somewhere by, eliminating friction, or whatever it is that the project you're working on. You just roll up the sleeves, and you just are just an integral part of the team. And so early in my career, when I was in my 20s, that was kind of my path. I felt like I was a little bit of a warrior. Like, I'm going out there and I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to by myself, and they're going to see that I can be just part of the team like any other gentleman could. But then I realized that there's certain things that were not in place to support me. Sometimes they had no bathrooms for women, and sometimes we didn't have the right outfit, like we call it personal protective equipment, not very suitable for women. And so there's little adaptive things that I realized once I got in the job, that wow, like we could do better in making that circumstance comfortable. And there's physical making it better, but there's also psychological. So you're kind of dealing with, are you judged the same way? Are you able to do the things that other people would be doing at the table? So you start observing and realizing that maybe there's different barriers that you didn't realize. And then you find your way to navigating these barriers and you evolve your style. And I had one thing that I share in a lot of the conversations I have is sometimes if you try to emulate a mentor who is of the other gender with the same characteristics, you may not see it as successful. You do need to kind of adapt to the fact that you're showing up in the world as a different gender and people are receiving you in a different way just by the fact that you're a different gender. Mm-hmm. And it seems very counterintuitive to me because I always thought, well, we're all equal and, but really at the end of the day, we're ancient pieces of equipment. And in some ways we have ancient brains and we have different conditioning that are subconscious that you don't realize exist. And then, so little by little, I was realizing it, that I couldn't be just like the other guys. And I had to adopt maybe something that was going to be more successful for me as a woman in that field. Didn't mean that I didn't contribute my brain power to the environment. It just meant I needed to find something that was authentic and something that allowed me to succeed in that environment. So it's an adaptive, I think, circumstance. And yeah, that's what my journey was early on. And that's why I felt, why let other women figure it out from scratch when I'm here, sitting here, like looking back at a long career in then STEM, and why not share what I know now? And that's why my book is not about business. It's about the whole life architecture to support a successful career and a successful life at home, because I think they're both intertwined in very complicated ways. So if you don't consider both, I don't think you're going to break through.
All right. So let's get to the book. Let's talk about the name of the book. What were some examples or some things that you went through that made you say, okay, I'm going to write this book and this is what I want to talk about? So give us some nuggets that we can look forward to with this book.
Yeah. So the book is called Us and Yet. Together we rise beyond traditional roles. And the word traditional roles was very intentional because I think we need to rise both in our business environments or, career as in non-traditional fields, but in non-traditional roles, but we also need to rise above the traditional roles at home. And so it's both sides. It's not just traditional roles in a work environment. It's the traditional roles at home. I think we need to build structures that will support us. We've had a long history of having one parent at home and one parent at work. And when we have dual career couples, they're most likely to experience more difficulties just because our world is not adapted to it. We're going through some disruption here where I live, where schools are closed. And that's very difficult for dual working couples. So we do need to think through it to support people working in non-traditional fields. We need to think through how do we support them at home as well. And how do we come in and support each other when you're part of a couple? How do you support each other in being able to pursue the passion and contribute to the society in the best way you can? Which, if you're inclined to take on, I don't know, astrophysics or whatever it is, like that, you can actually step into that ring and do it successfully.
So how have you been able to handle that in your life? And give us some words of wisdom of how you've been able to handle your private life and then your work life.
Yeah. My personal life has been one where I had a first marriage which ended in the divorce, and I realized that the person I was with just wouldn't be the right fit for the path that I was on. I wanted to take on international assignments, etc. And as you can imagine, navigating dual careers with international assignment, not that easy. You need to have two willing parties ready to step into that ring. And the first marriage just wasn't going to work for that. So um, I left the relationship and, moved on, met my spouse, my current spouse, and we both had a similar vision. The thirst for growth and the thirst for exploring the world. And we made a much better team. So you do find that you need to consider the other person's objectives and goals and values and kind of figure out which partner will actually work and the construct that you want to build. And it's true for any type of relationship. Maybe you don't want to travel, you just want to stay put into the same house that you grew up in. And you need to find that spouse that will actually support you in doing that. So it really is dependent on the individual. So my spouse and I, we tend to want to align on values. So at the foundation of it, that growth is foundational to our relationship. And when we make decisions relative to growth, we know that we got each other's back, like we support each other. And so we went on to travel the world together, taking on different assignments. We had kids along the way. We have 2 children. And to this day, it's about conversation on what are the priorities for each other. And I do share in one of the chapters of my book how you actually communicate across gender lines, because I do think that it's a little bit different. So you need to actually be aware of what are the challenges and what are the pitfalls of that communication. Coupled with that, if you're dual career, but even if you're not a dual career and one of you is at home, to do really intentional planning of what are the objectives, where you want to be in 6 months, where do you want to be in 18 months, where do you want to be in 10 years, and align on that conversation. It's interesting that I'm saying that today. I need to drink from my own Kool-Aid, because last night my spouse and I were saying, well, we haven't done our plan, 18 months plan in a long time. And we kind of need it. We were both kind of not really aligned in the last month. And I said, well, we need to kind of drink our own Kool-Aid and do the 18-month plan. So we're going to probably work on it. We started last night. It's a continuous journey, but the tricks that I give in is planning and all the different, I call it uh, all the different segments, not just the near term, the long term as well. So the whole spectrum of time frame. People tend to be good at planning for the next month because we know what's on our schedule, but we tend to have a pretty good idea of where we want to be, like when we grow up in 10 years. But in between, there's lots of things that you can optimize together. So my tip is, or have that conversation.
I love that because my husband and I do that too. We don't do 18 months, we do a year. And it really works. If you write it down and you look at it and you have this goal and you work at it together, man. And I always tell people it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen in a year, but it happens. Like it literally, and when it happens, we just look at each other like, oh my gosh, some of the things have been 10 years in the making. So, but it does happen. When it comes to your book, was it more based on your experience or did you have to do research, any kind of research for this book?
Yes, there's segments that are at the beginning a bit data heavy. The reason for that is I was trying to dissect, is there an argument for encouraging people in pursuing careers in non-traditional fields? Like what do we know in the data set that exists in the world? And I started pulling out on some stats and what was relevant. When do we actually see an impact? Do we really see an impact? Where do we see an impact? So there's a little bit of research in that space. I also did some interviews specifically about people who are negotiating. What do they see? So I had like a world renowned negotiator who I was friends with, and we had an offline interview and kind of shared with me what he had observed in a really long career that he had in coaching people on how to negotiate. And he saw that different styles, depending on your gender, resonated, other styles didn't. What were the superpowers of the different genders? So it seemed like we're segregating into the characteristics of different genders, but I think it's an important point. We cannot all be neutral because we're coming in as women, and I guess, our we have our friends, gentlemen, coming in as gentlemen, and we need to figure out how we maximize the potential of both and we become superpower teams by virtue of the fact that we bring our own unique perspective. And so negotiation is no different. I think you need to understand what works and what is successful and less successful for your own gender. So we kind of explore that together, and we kind of had some statistics associated with that. So it's a combination of interviews as well as research. And I share in the back of the book, you have all the references. I'm sure things are evolving as we speak, and I published last year. So we've seen new data coming this year, and it's kind of a little bit disappointing. I think we're seeing a bit of a stagnation in some of the metrics that I was publishing. So I'm hoping that we're continuing to make it an important aspect of life, because it's sad if someone has the capacity to help society and just by virtue of not having the right structure, the right help, the right tools, they wouldn't consider stepping in that ring. So, yeah.
So let's talk about, because we're talking about gender and gender roles, and our personalities are very different. I feel like sometimes, not sometimes, most men show up as themselves. And as women, like you said earlier, you said that you try to do how men did, and you had to realize that doesn't work. So let's talk more about that aspect. What did you have to do differently that you couldn't do the way a man does? Because when they show up however they do, it's respected. It's, wow, look at him, he's a powerhouse. And when we show up that way, it's like she's a bee, she's she's stuck up, like she's a witch. So let's get into that topic.
There's a whole chapter about that. I looked at, I call it the archetypes. When we look at history, in all cultures, there's these archetypes that are being defined. And, Venus, what was the book? Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Like, yes. This is an archetype construct where you kind of try to put a picture on what you observe in the world, and you try to define what that picture is in words. And we have that in all cultures, like indigenous culture, North American cultures, Asian cultures. So you think about yin yang in the Asian culture. That's kind of trying to define what a feminine archetype is and what a masculine archetype is. So it's part of our folklore. It's part of our culture. And understanding how you can authentically embody the archetype that you're in is probably the trick that you want to lean on. Embodying it in an authentic way, because if you're not authentic about it, it's going to fall flat. So similarly, if I'm trying to embody masculine type of energy that you describe, it's going to fall flat because someone is looking at me saying, well, she's not a guy. And that just doesn't resonate. We're very much, as I said, ancient brain, subconscious, a whole bunch of things are playing when you have an interaction with someone. So what I was surprised of was the two characteristics that are the most effective as if you're in the male archetype is competitiveness and assertiveness. So that's if you're a male. And then that we kind of rally behind guys that are assertive, rally behind guys that are competitive. Let's win together. We're going to be following them. It's just the way we are. This is the nature of things. But as you said, if you're a woman and you kind of really push these themes, it may work for you because some women are like that and they're successful, but your probability of success is lower.
Yeah.
For women, the characteristics that are the most effective for leadership, competency and warmth. What a shock when I learned that. I was like, really? Like competency and warmth? I'm like trying to figure out which, electrical box we're going to need to use for this installation, and I have to use warmth. But how do you actually do that in an authentic way? So it made me laugh. But I realized it was kind of the clue. I was like, okay, how do I show up at work with more warmth? How do I show up at work with all the competencies I bring and assure that I don't fall into the competitive and assertive space because it won't resonate well? So just knowing that was, I think, a breakthrough in my own career. All of a sudden it was, I'm showing up every day and I'm going to be warm and competent. So I kind of tried to do that in the best authentic way I could. And little by little, I had more and more success. And I was like, okay, well, this is working. So then it kind of fed me and put me on a different path, I think. And then it doesn't mean that you don't go for roles where you have authority. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I have a whole segment on what we call participative decision making, which is what are the roles that are actually going to be influencing the bottom line in an organization? Like, what are the roles that have budgetary accountabilities? And we don't see enough women in these roles, and higher leadership roles. We don't see enough women there. And it's because I think they're running into a whole bunch of micro issues so that we haven't really pinpointed yet. And by revealing the most we find to the world, I think we can chip away at it. And once you can't unsee these things, and you can start to adopt different methodology to get on the better side of it.
So I'm sure when you look at your industry and male dominated industries, I'm sure it's not exactly how we would want it to be. But you said you've been in this profession for 30 years. Is that correct? Have you seen any kind of little change, or is it exactly the same from when you started?
We do see lots of changes. The positive change I've seen is that more and more now men are seeing that they have an allyship role in ensuring that women are kind of enabled in the environment. Not favored, that's not what we're looking for, but that they're conscious of what are the limitations. Because if we don't have the allies, as you can imagine, if we're 1 in 10 and there's no allies, it's too hard of a lift. But if you start having 2 or 3 allies in a room, all of a sudden, the dynamic changes. So more and more people that are in the majority, and this is probably true for roles where men are the minority too, we see more allies, and that has changed, and people define themselves as allies. And I met one this summer, and he was able to enable women, probably in a much, much bigger way than I was, because he's at all the tables, but he's a super ally. And I was so impressed with how much knowledge he had about what are the micro things that we need to resolve. And he had done lots of soul searching on how do I actually lead a team that is diverse? How do I lead a team that has different points of view? How do I lead a team that will not all act the same way? And how do we actually embrace that and kind of uplift the people, maybe the quieter voice in the room? And so allyship is the thing that I've seen the last decade that has probably evolved beyond other things. The other thing is also I'm involved with the School of Engineering in my district, and we realized that some limitation in women entering in STEM, just from high school going into universities and colleges, they had some limitations. So these barriers are starting to be removed, and we see more women and young girls that, looking to a career in non-traditional fields because of that. So these are probably two areas, but we still have a long ways to go. And it's almost like we have one step forward or two step forward and then a little step back.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're a little bit in the step back place. And I want to encourage people not to step back and just to continue. I know it's not always easy, but it's still worth it because you do contribute in your own special way. And I think we're going to go further if we're together.
Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing that you just said that you feel like we're stepping back in today's world? Like, what is it? What's happening? What are you observing that makes you say that?
People don't want to talk about it anymore. It seems like it's off the radar, and maybe they think they've tried it and it hasn't worked, so they're giving up. And it's not super popular in the conversations anymore. And I did see that in the last probably year. And I do think that we ought to keep going because we don't want to leave people behind. We want everyone to reach their full potential. And that includes all the people working in non-traditional roles. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. What can you tell a young person, a young woman that's starting off in any field? It doesn't have to be male dominated, to gain that confidence to share your voice in a way that it will be heard. Because I think a lot of the times what we lack is that confidence to stand up and show people like, this is who I am. Because I know that's I've grown into my confidence. I wasn't always this way, but it's really hard. So what would you say to young girls or even women our age who want to start over?
Before I answer this question, I have to say, you said you're building into your confidence. In your podcast, you're very confident. And I love your demeanor. Like, you're so open in all the conversations. And that's I would say that's a very high quality to have, specifically as you find your voice, as you said, and finding your voice when you're a podcaster is a step beyond what people will actually venture to do. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I hide it well. I hide behind my nervousness very well.
No, you're doing fantastic.
Thank you.
You're very open, like in your voice and tone and all that. So it's great. Even if you deal with some very complicated sometimes issues like that are more personal and more difficult.
Yeah.
But I really think that you have a very good way about thinking through what will bring people.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The tip I would give, or the idea I would give, is that you can't do it alone, and don't accept the commentary that says you can have everything you want, but not all at the same time. I absolutely don't like that, and the reason for that is, why can't I have it all? Like, why can't I have a good career that challenges me, that, you know, it goes into my strengths? And why can't I have the perfect partner in my life and perfect friends and family connections? Like, wish it all and put it all on the docket and put it all on the docket now. But you can't do it alone. You have to find the help you need, and you have to be humble and vulnerable to find that support that you need. And if the support you have in your life is not the support you need to figure out a way to get out of that support and find the new one. And I gave an example early. My first spouse was not the spouse had I needed to be able to be successful in what I want to do in my life. And I kind of projected myself. I said, do I want to be there in 50 years? And my answer was no. So I had to, as hard as it was from a heart perspective, I had to step out. And I'm so glad I did, because we're nearly 20 years later, and I have two beautiful children with, you know, a spouse that is right there by my side, and we are super aligned on what we want about our life. So yeah, want it all and put it all on the docket at the same time, but be vulnerable and figure out the support that you need to succeed, and find the support in ways that you may not think. So sometimes people will settle. It is the daycare that I picked only open from whatever 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I'm working from 8 to 5. Well, that's not the support you need. Like, you need to find someone who will look after your children from the time you leave to the evening. And it might be the next door neighbor. It might be, so be innovative in finding the solutions. It might be someone who's retired next door who can take care of them, or but really apply your brains to remove those barriers that will allow you to be successful.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we hide behind those barriers, like, oh, I can't do this because of this and this and this. Things are going to be hard for anything that you want. It's going to be hard. And I'm giving myself a pep talk because I make excuses and I'm like, well, that can't happen because of this. And it's because of my own fears. It's not the truth, right? It's something that I've told myself so that I don't have to put forth the effort, because it's scary, and we're never stuck. It's going to be hard to unstuck yourself. I don't know how that is, but I love that you say that, because it reconfirms for me that anything is possible if you just think outside the box and if you really want it. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else you would love to share with us about your book, about your profession, about anything?
Well, thank you for hosting. This is great. And thank you for the work that you do. And yeah, look up my book. It's on Amazon, Us and Yet. And it's basically about us working together, figuring out how we can do it better, and how it's a journey. And yet is about things that are not fully complete, something that is going to still be evolving, and yet we can do so much, together, and we can evolve together. So that's the thought of the day, and I appreciate the audience for listening.
And do you have a website or your socials? Would you like to share that? And then I'll put it in the notes as well.
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah, you can find me at usandyet.com. And I do have a little bit of information there. You can join our mailing list. And I'm certainly open to having different platforms to speak and share my experience, because that's the whole reason why I wrote the book, is like, don't be alone. It was talking about finding the help. I felt like I could help. So that's why I kind of stepped into that authorship ring.
I love it. So if we want to talk to someone who is a professional woman and we're scared or we have questions, you're the girl to call. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Like I said in the beginning, I love new voices, and I really, really thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we can talk again.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Bye. I'll leave you all with this. Start showing up as her. Start showing up as the woman you want to become. Move with confidence, set boundaries without guilt, and make decisions from a place of abundance, not fear. Speak with authority, invest in yourself, and prioritize your peace. Elevate your habits, surround yourself with people who inspire you, and trust that you are already becoming her. Every step, every choice, and every moment is shaping the version of you that you've always envisioned. Keep going. Thank you so much for listening to Virago 24/7. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and please give us 5-star ratings. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Virago24_7 and on Facebook at Virago24/7. And just connect with us and share your story. We'd love to hear from you.